and for your children as well. Okay, let's just go right into it, shall we? Okay, let me introduce the panelists one by one. Very impressive lot. Yeah. Let me introduce Maureen. Maureen she's a licensed clinical child psychologist with more than 30 years of experience working with children and their families. She served as the associate professor of psychology at NIE here in Singapore and chaired the Singapore Register of Psychologists for 4 years. She's now based back in the US, and she is the author of 5 books. And her and her husband, Doug, serve as a therapeutic foster parents for a seriously disturbed teenager in the home for 10 years. She's a psychologist with a great heart. Pamela, also a dear friend, an educational developmental psychologist, and a director and founding partner at Think Kids and Think Psychological Services. So she's an entrepreneur in her own right, a full member of the Singapore Psychological Society. Yeah, she has extensive experience working with children with autism and other learning disabilities in the region, and to be able to help them to help children to cope with stress, school stresses, anxiety, and all that. There are stresses in Singapore in schools. I didn't know that. And selective mutism and other kinds of other self-harming behavior. Lastly, let me introduce Zerlina, a dear friend as well. She's a leadership and mindfulness coach, an associate of ICF partner and country director of Potential Project with global clients such as Accenture, IKEA, and Unilever, and the like. She's a mindfulness practitioner, and she's really, really big on. I've been in some of her mindfulness sessions, and it's quite amazing. And she's big on mindful parenting. I think a lot of you will benefit from that, her sharing in that aspect. And she teaches a mindfulness initiative at SMU here in Singapore. That's great. Okay, everyone. I'm just gonna we have a bunch of topics we want to explore this morning, yeah, in a relative short time. But what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna ask each of you ladies to kind of just share with us your experience in this mental health sector, right? At least, especially over the past few years, what you have seen, especially in relationship to to young people, the children, and to area of parenting. Maureen, can I just start with you?
Sure. I'm currently in private practice working with families predominantly in North Africa, in Asia, and Europe. And as you mentioned earlier, I spent 11 years working in Singapore. And in that role, provided a lot of clinical supervision for psychologists there who were working with children as well as with adults, and also worked a lot with teachers since I was at NIE. We were training teachers as well as psychologists. And as chairperson of the National Register, I was really encouraged to see how the practice of psychology advanced over the last, actually now about 15 years. Things have come a long way. There are a lot more resources in place, a lot more support for families, and a lot more awareness about mental health issues.
So the awareness has been gone up.
Yeah, it's really increased. Yeah,
yes.
It's really increased.
Yes, I totally agree with that. In my own work in the mental wellness space. Pam, can I ask you to share your experience and what are you seeing on the ground because you do a lot of groundwork with young people. Thank you, Maureen, for sharing.
Sure. I mean, I think in the several years as well, same as Maureen, I've seen a lot more awareness and parents are coming to seek help a lot earlier in general. I mean, I work with a lot of very young kids from 2 years old all the way to 18 because I do some early intervention work as well for learning difficulties and developmental disorders. So we used to get kids at maybe much later, 5, 6 years old. Now they're coming in as early as 2 years old. So there certainly is that early awareness. People are just more able to figure out what's going on with their child and that kind of thing. But I think it's also the work of, the practice of psychology in Singapore, which has changed over the years. There's a lot more campaigning going on as well in this space, I think, which has shown that it helps. And like Maureen said, I mean, practicing psychology in Singapore as a registered psychologist is a big deal here because psychologists are not really well governed in Singapore to begin with in that sense. But that has also been changing through the years. So overall, I think we are moving in the right space. Kids are starting to get the help they need a little bit earlier than before. But of course, we've got a long way to go.
Thank you, Pam. Zerlina.
Good morning, everyone. So I want to echo exactly what Maureen and Pam have said, and I want to say that the wonderful work that psychologists as yourselves have done and worked so hard in Singapore through all these years. And it's people like yourselves who I often refer our clients to, whether these are clients for themselves as leaders in organizations or as parents or who come through the various parts of Singapore and around the world where I work. Overall, Yen Lu, I noticed that the awareness has increased. People are just getting access to more information. Thank you. One of the good things about the internet and social media, I want to say. I also think COVID had a part to play in this. We were all thrown in together. We weren't allowed to busy ourselves with distractions that are often outside of our lives. But we were thrown in at home together, and we were no longer able to run away from things that were too painful, perhaps to address, something that we would procrastinate on because it didn't seem like a big issue. Coming to Pam's point about early intervention. But also I want to believe that as a society, we're learning how to trust ourselves a lot more. Whether as parents, whether as children, whether as grown-ups, we're learning to trust that inner voice rather than listening and just following. We're learning to question and kind of, like I said, trust that wisdom.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing, Maureen, Pam, and Zerlina. Let me just add my own observation. In our own work in this mental health space, Youth Over the Rainbow, that's my other nonprofit. We've been active now for, I don't know, coming up 9 years. When we started, they were you can count on one hand the number of organizations involved, especially in the youth mental health. Now there are many, many, many. I think every other week, you turn around, there's another organization that's working on mental health, whether it's in a nonprofit or in the social space, or even startups now. You know, I'm also active in the startup space, and there are many, many startups now coming up addressing the mental health issues, not just in the U.S. The U.S. mental health has become the next big category if you've been looking of investment in mental health, and there's some unicorns are coming up. But even here in Singapore, I think there are probably over a dozen, if not more, startups that come up in the past few years, just addressing this. You know, this I think I would say the grand challenge, right? People say, oh, pandemic, but really mental health is the next major, it's here already, next major epidemic that we're all facing. That's why this topic is so important. And especially, you know, involved now, of course, you know, the past year, the pandemic, youth mental health challenges have been on the rise already for a number of years. And this whole pandemic has just essentially exacerbated the whole situation. You know, and all the work I've been reading, the research has shown that young people, especially the age from teenage all the way into the 20s, are the most impacted by the pandemic. So what I want to ask the panelists next is, you know, pandemic aside, why is it that the youth has been facing the mental health challenges in such a major way? Why is that? And why it's been you know, I have my own thesis on this, but why is it, you know, going up? And it's been suicide Suicide is the number one cause of death in the US for youth. That's amazing. More than, I think for the first time surpassing car accidents, right? Singapore is for age 20 to 29 is the second, I think that's the group, the second leading cause of death. So can we talk about this topic? I think this topic is on a lot of people's mind. It's on my mind. What are some of the challenges that you think the youth are facing today? And we'll talk about possible solution later, but let's talk about the challenges first. Who want to go first? Maureen, would you like to take this one on?
Sure. I'll just mention one thing. Actually before COVID, there was this rise occurring before COVID. So COVID has just exacerbated some trends that were already in place before the pandemic struck. But one of the contributing factors is the rise of social media. And we don't have time tonight to get into all the details about how social media is used and whatever, but it's very clear that there's a lot more social isolation among young people. There's also a lot more exposure to cyberbullying. And it's not social media per se, it's how social media is being used. So there are plenty of kids who have no trouble at all with social media, but widely researchers believe that the rise in social media has had a significant impact on mental health problems for young people, and particularly young children. We can come back to that later when we talk about what parents might do, but I'm sure Pamela's got quite a bit of experience with screen exposure with young children and the negative impact that is having on many children's development.
Yeah, so social media, that's a big topic. The generation of digital natives. Right, where that's the, we always had, every time we had a parenting fire chat, this issue always comes up. We'll talk more about that. Thank you. And Pam, Zerlina, would you like to comment on this? What other challenges? Yeah.
Expectations, I guess, general expectations, inconsistent expectations, I guess, for children in general. I think our kids of this age as well, as much as we're all global travelers, I think kids' living stability is not the same as before. So in my practice, we also see a lot of people who transition into Singapore because of work, and then they move from country to country, and that kind of thing. And that's actually quite disruptive for very young kids who basically do not even have a foothold in a place for more than 2 years, for example. So they build friendships, they lose friendships, and hence also turning into social media and having friends online, because those are kind of stable for them. And it changes along the way. An interesting thing that one of my colleagues was saying that they, when she speaks to kids now, she asks them, oh, do you have friends? They would say, yes, I have friends. But she needs to always clarify, okay, are these friends people you see, or are these friends you've actually never met in your life? And most of the time, they're actually online friends. We never had to ask a question like this, right? We all assume friends, i.e., we've been with them before, we've seen them before, but it's actually sad that most of the time it's actually online friends.
Yeah.
So Yan Lu, I want to just kind of steer us a little bit away from this big bad aspect of social media. It's a huge topic. I'm not belittling it in any way, shape, or form. I think we need like a whole week to talk about that for sure. One of the things I noticed is presence, pure and simple. We are here physically, but how many of us now are somewhere else, either in our minds, or how many of you are on your devices now, saying to your friends, hey, I'm on this thing, hey, it's quite good, come and join us, right? Pure and simple presence. How many of us are building the right safe psychological space for our children at home? How many of us know how to do that, and what does that really mean? How many of us actually question that? We have accepted so many things, right? I know for me, for one, I spent many, many years looking after the physical health of my children, their academic health, everything that was outcome related. But then it's sort of, I sort of stopped one day and I thought, who looks after their mental, emotional health?
Mhm.
I can't outsource that.
Mm.
But where do I start with that?
Mhm.
We can't always just tell, we need to show. And how do we show? We show with how we make them feel. Presence, undivided acceptance, unconditional love. Really, we know all these things.
Mhm.
But when we're yelling at them or saying to them that, this is for your own good, like, is it really? Is it really? So why are they turning to social media for a sense of belonging? Is it really home, sweet home? Do we give them the space to explode at home? Because life outside the home is stressful, is overwhelming, especially for those of you living in Singapore. If you have a sensory child at all, please understand that the traffic, the noise, the speakers, everything, they need that presence from you and the space at home.
Yeah, thank you for that very powerful sharing. So we just talked about the rise of social media and what kind of impact it may have, for better, for worse. What does it mean for the digital natives? What does the friend mean for a digital native? And in these days and ages, most likely to be an online friend, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook, and what are the TikTok? My gosh, I don't know.
Yeah, but we have to look
I
at
don't know what are the-
ourselves.
Yes,
Yandu.
absolutely.
We
Yes.
have to look at ourselves.
How
many times are parents actually not even listening or engaging with their kids?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been so many situations. We'll go to the restaurant. I mean, I talked about this all the time. You have family going out for a meal. They're all sitting around the table, and guess what? They're not talking to each other. They're talking to each other through their phone. They text to each other. Or they're texting to some other people. So they're not even present for each other. And that's what we're talking about. So that's why parenting, today's session is not just about mental well-being, it's about parenting. And that's the thing. And what does parenting mean in this day and age? We're going to explore that in great depth in the second half of this. But before we do that, Hawk Light just reminded me we're supposed to do a poll. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that will engage everybody.
Yes. So we're going to do a little poll right now, just to kind of get a sense from you, the audience, where things are with you, right now. And after a year and a quarter of this pandemic situation, we want to get a sense of some sensing thing here. Let me just start the poll right now. Can everybody see poll?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, please, if you could, please enter your input for the poll, so that you can help us kind of collectively get a sense of where are we as parents. I'm gonna wait until most everyone had a chance, to enter to do the poll. Yeah, and more are coming in. We have about a quarter now. Sorry, a third of people. I'm gonna wait about another 30 seconds or so. If everybody can just. Give us a few more seconds, if you could just, Okay, so I'm gonna, these are preliminary numbers, but you can all see on the screen here. Can you all see on the screen?
No.
Not yet? Not yet. Okay, let me just give another minute. We have about 25 more people haven't, but I'm gonna just give it a few more seconds. I'm gonna end the poll.
Yeah, you're the only one who can see the results of the poll, Yin.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me give it just people another couple of seconds. Any more? Any more? Okay, I'm going to end the poll right now. 55 people out of 78 have responded.
Mhm.
Oh, 70. Oh, okay. 70 people have voted, 90%. Okay, I'm going to end the poll right now. Okay, everybody see the, okay, let me share the result, yeah? Okay, everybody see the result on the screen?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. So out of this group of about 75 attendees today, majority of you have teenage, well, more than, how many is that? Okay, 68%. Wait, something is not right. Oh, okay. Oh, of course. Some of you have more than one child. Of course, I forgot that. We're more than 78 votes here. Okay, so great. So 12% have really young children, preschool. 37% have kind of that age of primary school to secondary. 37%, so more than a third. A good many of you, almost more than 2/3, have a teenage child, right? And
Lou, I think everybody can see
see that, right?
we
Okay,
can,
let me move on
yeah,
to that.
because you've
Okay,
shared that, yeah.
sure,
So we
thank
can
you.
see it.
Great,
Sure.
okay, let me share that.
Yeah, I think what's most striking here for me is just to see that 74% of our participants describe themselves as surviving in their parenting, and that's concerning. So, but it makes sense that people would be here for this. So it's good that we're going to be talking about
Yes,
some practical tips
yes,
in just a few minutes.
absolutely. Yes, yes.
So Maureen, thank you for calling that out. I was also very curious about that. And for those of you who can access the chat, we would love to hear more from you or the Q&A around why do you feel that you're thriving? What do you feel you need, or what is missing there for you to shift that a little bit into a sense of agency, right? A sense of empowerment, so that you don't feel so much that, this is such a challenge. Because what happens, I think Maureen and Pam, you'll probably be aware of this, is we're such beacons of energy, aren't we? And if we are feeling like we're stuck in the weeds and 2020 has taken so much from us, that we are then finding it difficult to take care of others, then what happens with the energy that we expend around us? And how then also do children, right, sometimes feel, and kids have taken a big part of responsibility for this, where I've had parents come and say to me, so emotionally, that their children have been afraid to tell them what's really going on for them, because they see the parents themselves struggling,
a tough time.
when they're not in a good state, right? So I'm not talking about putting a mask on or anything like that at all. It's about just authentically having these sorts of discussions. But first, we need to start with our own awareness. So let's maybe take this moment and share, if those of you feel safe in the chat, why do you feel you're just surviving?
And Zerlina, I want to come back to something you said earlier that's relevant to what you're just talking about right now. And that is that the World Health Organization has identified that the number one most important parenting behavior for children is responsiveness, being present, as you mentioned, being present and responding. And responding means observing the child's needs and then either verbally or non-verbally responding in a prompt kind of way. And we all know that one of the challenges, a common challenge in Singapore, is that parents simply sometimes feel like they can't even be present because of the demands that they're trying to juggle.
Correct. And sometimes, Maureen, responding is no response.
Just listening.
Right? And it's to really say, you know what, honey, I totally hear you. I don't have an answer for you right now. Shall we work it out together?
Yeah.
But even to do that, I was
It's
just going to say, I was just going to say that even that, for some parents, they're not even physically in the space with their children.
Correct.
So
Yes.
So societal demands get in the way, basically, especially in Singapore. And we are so used to outsourcing our parenting to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So I want to take this chance to say something. My parents are in their late 70s, 80s. They might even be on this session. Bless them. I'm here very much because of them. I do the work that I do because of the legacy that, you know, they have created. And one of the things that they constantly tell me is we need only this much, right, to survive. Honestly, in terms of financial setup, you know, our situations, in terms of affordability, and even this whole definition of success. And what they've noticed with their friends, you know, as they've grown and journeyed with them, is at this age, you know, towards the end of all our lives, what breaks their heart is not how successful or not their children are. What breaks their heart is when they have no relationship with their children, all the people they care and love most. So then again, the question is, what are we paying attention to? What are we really paying attention to?
One of the challenges that I was just reading an article on the other day. One of the challenges that youth are facing today, especially teenagers during this period, pandemic, is that they cannot physically go to school and hang out with their friends. The social aspect of their life has been completely missing. And as you know, teens, you know, their life evolves, whether we like it or not, around their friends, right? So that's been a big part of the cause of, you know, despite the fact they also need the fact that the reality is that they all need, you know, to hang out or to be with their friends physically. So how can we? It's a tough one, and also sometimes, and everybody, you know, parents are working from home. Everybody's, you know, in some situations they're all crammed into, you know, I mean, you know,
small space.
Yeah,
right?
very small space. Some of us, we cannot even imagine the situation that they find themselves in. So what for those parents, what can we tell them?
Well, I different things work for different people, but I'll tell you about one family I know in Singapore who, when their children were small, made a difficult decision that they got actually quite a bit of pushback from their friends, who were kind of flabbergasted that they did it. But they made a decision as a couple, when they have 3 girls, that they would do no schoolwork on Sundays. They were going to take one day of the weekend, and it was going to be a no homework, no school activity, no tuition, and it was going to be a family day when people could do the things that they enjoy. And they've kept, now their girls are teenagers, I think the oldest is 16, and they've kept that up. Even it's not easy to do. It's been a family commitment, but it's a way to preserve what Zerlina's talking about, that space to be able to be together and to respond. And not every family can do that, of course, but there are choices we can make to create those sacred spaces to preserve those relationships. That's what Zerlina, I think, is getting at.
Yes. So really, parents have a lot. I mean, they have there's a lot they can do. We can do as parents.
Small things can have a big impact.
Create a space. Yes. You know, I would love for more of the audience out there, if you could just, you know, I think Zerlina started talking about this, but, you know, if you can just type in the kind of challenges that you're facing. You know, why are you struggling? Why are you surviving? Why are you? Some of you are thriving, which is good to see. What makes you thrive?
So there are some comments that are being written, you know, I think people are sensing this sense of you're not alone. So thank you everyone for bravely speaking up and sharing. This is what we're all here for. We're in a space of no judgment. So please, this is a session for you. You need to leave feeling like it has been helpful for you, please. Then the other thing, Yenlu, I wanted to point out is that there are a few questions, actually 5 already on the Q&A, and we can also start addressing those.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What one Ash talked about letting go. Yeah, and then we need to talk about Yeah, especially with those with special needs kids. So what advice can we give? Second question is about the mood, changing mood, and that comes with the territory sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, be present, engage even in a normal conversation. Yeah, how when do we need to be present? When is the right time to be present? That's the other question. When should we intervene? When should we, versus just letting them be, on the matter of being responsive. When parents are responsive to the child, become more demanding and impatient. How do we deal with children like that? Okay, increasing demand in skills and society obligations and demands cause a limited time for anyone to have time to care for their own well-being. The increasing stress in the society has caused spill out stress from teachers at school, parents with work stress somehow have got dumbed down to our children. This is a big topic, right? Everybody, yeah, this is a big topic. This, chronic stress is actually, it's the cancer, right? That's I think that's inflicting the society. Everybody's chronically stressed because we're all chasing the next, we're in the corporate rat race, or we're in a rat race of some sort. Feel like we are constantly behind. We need to keep up with the Joneses, right? That's a big topic by itself.
Well, you bring up an important point though, Yen-Lu, related to some things that Pamela and Zerlina were saying earlier, and that is that there really are some simple things that parents can do that would have a very big impact over the trajectory of their children's lifespan. It seems almost unbelievable that it's so, but it is true that it would happen. And one of those is taking care of yourself. That does two things. So if parents can prioritize taking some time and space for themselves, first of all, it models that for their children, that's an important thing to do. But the other thing is that I can't really be present with my kids if I am not present within myself. If I, Zerlina or Pam, do you want to say a little bit more about that? You've been working very directly with that.
Yeah,
so self-care, right? So even organizing your calendar on a weekly basis for time for yourself, and that's your set routine. I know, especially in Singapore, everyone always says there's never a right time to do something. There's never going to be a right time. You just have to set it right in your calendar, and you insist that that's the time you have for yourself. Even if you're having the most important meeting, every week you need that 1 hour, that 2 hours. The other thing that I hear very commonly with parents is, I have no time for my kids because by the time I get home from work, it's 8 o'clock. They need to wash up, they need to get to bed. I'm a working mother as well, so I understand that. But I think one thing that is great, and I try to do it with my kid as much as possible, is that power hour or the power 2 hours, where you have that uninvited, not distracted by anything, and you just spend time with your child. I have a very young kid. She's only 3 years old, so slightly different from the older kids, where you give them the time, and it's so routine based that, I saw some of the questions where parents said, when do I back off? When they might not want to listen to me, and but if you have that set time every day, when your child is ready, they will speak to you.
Yes.
As they know that that's the space, they might not be ready today. It might take 2 weeks, it might take 2 months. They will get there. Teenagers need space. We all know that. They are also going through a trajectory of developmental growth and things like that, coming to themselves, understanding themselves slightly better. Yeah. But if you always give that set an amount of space, they will speak to you when the time is right. But they need to know safe space, open communication, and that kind of thing, right? It's easier said than done. Parents always say, I let them openly communicate, but a lot of times we judge what they say. Yeah. So that makes it also a little bit tricky for them to want to say things to us.
Yes.
That's so important, Pam and Maureen, and thank you for bringing this up. Firstly, I want to say to everyone who has started writing here, can we just take a moment of self-compassion? That is one of the biggest things about self-care for me, is finding a way, and everyone can do this in your own way. I just like to, for you to just compliment yourself with one thing, just in this moment now. And if you've got if you can't think of anything, just give yourself a hug.
Mhm.
Right? Just put your arms around yourself and just hold yourself. Just acknowledge that you're really just doing the best that you can. And that threshold is different for all of us. We're all different, and we're not here to prescribe any silver bullets, because there isn't. I think Maureen and Pam, you are, clinical professionals. I'm not a psychologist, so I really speak from what I observe and the people I work with in the workplace as well as outside. One of the things that brought me to this work was just noticing how very successful people can be amazing in the workplace, but things just fall apart for them at home.
Mhm.
So what's really going on? And so it is the self-care, it is taking the moment to acknowledge yourself. What do I need to look after myself, firstly? So for many of us, I think we all know, I think Maureen, we spoke about this as well. So I'm going to bring up this big can of worms, sleep. So every one of you might have read the articles in the newspapers. Singapore recently is all about mental health and all these good habits and how sleep deprived as a nation we are.
Yeah.
So I want to say that it all starts in our mind. Our mind is our amazing control center. Of course, there is our heart as well and everything else. But if we don't get enough sleep, we're not really putting ourselves in the best position for success. Exercise, of course, diet. And for me, a mindfulness practice, which is something that you do to look after your mental health a little bit every day. It's like going to the gym. Don't skip. If you've only got a minute, then do a minute. But when, parents and leaders turn around and say to me, I don't have 5 minutes for myself, then I'm quite tough. I say, then, that 24 hours less 5 minutes, you're really of no use to anybody.
Yeah.
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 That's so
Yeah.
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 I mean, whether it's parents or leaders in the corporate world, I think, be able to role model and model the way, as we call it, is very, very, I mean, that's what kids are, your employees, right? They're always following your example. That's what we're saying here.
Yeah.
So I think, but it's also a matter of priority. I think we just need to decide what is it. And this is what, for me, this is what's coming up. Is that I think there's so many demands that's placed on us. The questions that are coming out, from lots of you here. There's so much. The society is placing so much demand on each of us as parent, as employee, as as human being. But what is it that what is it that what's the most important thing? What's the most important thing for us? And I think always comes down to, I think self-care is definitely one of those things, because at the end of the day, we all, as parents and as teachers, we are all caregivers. We're all caregivers in our own right as human beings. And if we cannot, take care of ourselves, we cannot fill our own cup, as we say, cannot fill other people's cup. So I think that's where it starts. And being vulnerable, for me, being vulnerable is also very, very, to show that, hey, I'm just like you, right? I'm also struggling. I also, I have my challenges. Let's work on it together.
Yep. Happy parent, happy child.
Imagine if you were trying every day to do your job and to parent your children while legally intoxicated. Imagine how difficult that would be. And that is what happens when we are sleep deprived just by 1 hour. The vast majority of adults need 8 hours a night. And the research is very clear that if you get even 1 hour of sleep deprivation, of course, they do lots of studies on this because there's lots of people who are sleep deprived, and lots of, like the military does a lot of studies on sleep deprivation because they're always depriving people of sleep. And if you just have 1 hour, you just only get 7 hours. And I know in Singapore, I know most people are not even getting 7 hours. You're lucky to get 6. You're lucky to get 6. But 1 hour of sleep deprivation is equivalent to legal intoxication. Now, the good news is you get used to it. So you think you're fine. But if we were to run a test with you, your reflexes, your judgment, and your thinking ability, your ability to concentrate would be significantly impaired, as if you had had too many drinks. So when I was supervising, I had 40 staff I was supervising at one point at NIE. And I used to say to people, I'm not interested in getting the most out of you. That's not what I want. What I'm interested in is in getting the best out of you. And that means that you need to get some rest on a regular basis. And I had to sit down. I remember conversations I had with 4 staff in particular on different times who were just working all the time. And I had to sit them down and say to one of them, one of your goals for this year is that you will take a vacation. I'm not interested in you being here all the time and you working every weekend. And another younger person that I had to tell, I don't want you working 7 days a week. You're going to burn out. Then what good are you? The same thing applies in parenting. You can't just go, work all the time, not sleep enough and think that you're going to be okay. That's ridiculous. But I also I don't want people to come away feeling judged about their sleep or feeling like, well, here's one more expectation I came. No. I've lived in Singapore. I've worked in Singapore. I understand the challenge very, very well of what that's like. And I want to suggest to people that if it sounds impossible to you, start with 15 minutes. Okay. So let's say you go to bed at midnight, you get up at 6 o'clock right now. That's your regular schedule. Cut it back to 11:45. You can't get 8 hours of sleep if you're not in bed for 8 hours. And if you're currently only in bed for 6, it's going to take you maybe a year to get that back to where you can be in bed actually for 8 hours.
Great point.
Work with 15-minute increments.
Yes. So sleep is a big one. Sleep is a big one.
It's enormous.
It's probably this. If you're going to point to one thing, that's probably the most important thing, to get enough sleep. How about other things? What else can we do for ourselves?
So I think, Yan-Lu, just so that we can put this sleep thing to bed, shall we promise the audience here that we will add some of these, Maureen, wonderful resources and tips to our Google Doc?
Yes.
Sure, I have a list.
Yes.
Yeah, let's do that because there are some very simple things that we can all do.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right.
I'm just going to end it there by saying our organizational research have shown that senior C-suite leaders get the most sleep out of anybody else in management because they cannot, as Maureen say, feel like they're on some sort of other path when they have to make difficult decisions. And I want to say that all of us should be taking the leaf out of that.
Yes.
Good point.
Yes. In fact, in the resources that we're about to give to the audience, there's quite a bit of resources on self-care. So quite a bit of stuff there from Over the Rainbow and other places. So you can tap into those are the things that you can that hopefully will benefit you. Yeah. So
we're getting a lot of good suggestions from the attendees too in the chat. I've been keeping an eye on them too.
Let's go back to that. Yeah, let's go back to the chat.
It's okay. We can save the chat at the end, and people can save the chat, and then there's a lot of good suggestions from people who are trying things.
Pam and
have
Maureen,
had success.
I'm just curious to know, would you each like to pick out a question from the Q&A to attend to? That might also be helpful.
Oh, in the
Something
Q&A?
that speaks to you. Yeah.
Okay.
I saw one about special needs. Maybe I'll talk about that one. I think, has that been answered? Sorry.
Just go ahead, Pam.
Yeah,
please.
I think she was talking about when to let go because I guess they feel like they need more help and things like that. I work with a lot of children with special needs and early needs as well. And most of the time, a lot of parents tell me that it's hard because the expectations and that kind of thing, and they don't know the kids need help with everything. So one thing we often empower parents to do is teach your kids as much independent skill as possible. At the end of the day, I think all parents the same, special needs or not, we want our kids to be happy. We want our kids to meet their maximum potential, whatever they might be individually, and that could in their own capacity. And we want them to be able to take care of themselves. So those are the 3 main points most of the time. So to let go, what that means is you need to empower your child, teach them more independent skills, allow them to learn. A lot of kids with special needs are more capable than we think that they are, and they can do a lot more than we think they can do. As parents, you know your child the best. I always say that. And I think that goes back to what Zelina was saying about instinct gut. As a parent, all kids are different, all kids are individual. There's no two kids are the same. There's no template for parenting to begin with. You need to understand where your kid is at, and then you give the best and you teach your kids the independent skill. And when you start doing that, you're going to get more confident in kind of letting go and letting your child actually thrive in their own environment.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Pam. And any other question you want? Do you want to address one, Zelina? Let's see, what else?
Yeah, actually, I was just typing a reply to Cheryl about being present. So I might just verbalize that. So the point about being having teenagers it's not just even teenagers, it's everyone. Having unpredictable moods. So my response was to say that it's not just teenagers who are unpredictable in their mood. I want to say me as an adult, I'm unpredictable with my moods. So the trick about presence is that it can be trained. So learning how to be fully present, learning to manage our minds so that they don't wander, so that we can be truly active listeners, we can engage. We can actually train this. So again, a whole huge other topic. For those of you who are interested, please connect with me offline. The mindfulness training is something that is secular. Yeah. There's something that has helped me tremendously. And I've got some great 360 feedback from my 3 teenagers in the house. It was someone's great idea to have 3 kids in 3 years. I don't know whose it was, but so I just wanted to say, and neurodiverse kids. So it's a wonderful challenge. I'm enjoying the ride. I think when we shift our perspective sometimes, if we put as much effort into problem solving at home, I like to say, as we do at work, sometimes we might find a different way to look at things. So I want to just say I'm offering my time for anyone who wants to find out a little bit more. The other question was about letting go. Same thing, right? Quite often this is really, we have to step back and ask ourselves, even in the moment when we're so severely challenged, and we come back to this concept of compassion. How can I be of service to you? It's not about, do I really need to correct the tone of voice at this very moment? Is that helpful for me to say, you're just being so rude in the way that you're saying to me how bad a day you had. Can't you say it more nicely? Now, I'm sorry, but your child is trying to tell you how bad a day they had. Is this the right moment to be, if we want to be of service to them, to be supportive, to encourage communication, is this the right time to correct their tone? Hard as it is, I have learned to train myself to just go, that's just not needed. Let's just put it in a parking lot. And seriously, I have Post-its wherever I am all over the house. And we have a parking lot where, well, I do certainly, where now is not the right time to speak to you about this, but I do want to get to it at some point before you die or before I die, that sort of thing. So this is the thing. So presence can be trained. Compassion, how can I be of service to you at this time? When can we actually teach these lessons so that it can land in the right way? Do we need to be everything to everyone in this moment? How many of us have read so many books, right? Journals, books, listen to podcasts, all those sorts of things, all the great strategies and tips, and we go, yeah, I'm going to do it. In that moment, all out the window, we say all the wrong things. They say all the wrong things. This happens to grown-ups as well. What happens to all of that? So I like to call this situational leadership, right? And it's the same for parents. How do we access in that moment to be the best versions of ourselves? How do we role model that? We need to have some kind of management over our mind, our actions, our thoughts, and our behaviors. And it is possible to train.
Yes. Thank you for that. Okay. We addressed a lot of, we addressed a lot of the, so we had one of the topic was how can parents do more to effect more positive mental well-being in the family. I think we addressed a lot of that, especially what Zerlina and Pamela had shared with us, and also Maureen as well. Okay, I'm going to go to the next topic, yeah, and in the mind to kind of start wrapping up in the next 15 minutes or so. Yourselves, how about yourself? What are some of the things that you do to improve your own well-being? Give us 1 or 2 tips.
Well, I can share 2 things that I'm religious about. I'm religious about rest, not only sleep, but also taking breaks every day, taking a break once a week, and making sure that every few months I get a break. I found working in Singapore very, very stressful. And I understood the dilemma that if you take some time off, you feel like you get behind. But I found that if I took time off very regularly, that I would be refreshed enough. And if I was rested enough, I could keep going and feel good about what I was doing. Otherwise, I got really exhausted after a few months. The other thing I'm religious about, frankly, is exercise. Exercise is the miracle drug. Okay, it's a miracle drug. And my husband and I are both committed. We're really religious about it 5 days a week for us. Now, I know that's not possible for a lot of people, but and actually we weren't doing that before we got to Singapore, but when we experienced what the stress was going to be like at work, we said, we've got to up our game. If we're going to be able to do this and succeed here, we're going to have to exercise more than we've been exercising. And so we upped it actually in Singapore to 6 days a week, because that's what refuels your body. That's what gives you energy. That's what clears your mind. It does a lot of things chemically. It protects you from disease. It's almost paradoxical because you think, I don't have time to exercise. You don't have time not to exercise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exercise adds 2 hours of energy to your day.
Absolutely.
So those are the 2 things I do.
Yeah.
Pamela, Zerlina, what do you guys do?
Yeah, what do you guys? Yeah.
I have a set routine on a weekly basis, basically, and I'm a little bit anal about it as well. I set specific time every week that I just have to myself, whether or not I'm doing gardening or whether or not I'm doing exercise. I mean, I work quite a lot, I have to admit it.
Of course.
I don't have...
You live in Singapore. You work a lot.
I would like to sleep better, but I also have a toddler. Not that I'm blaming her in any way or form, but that's the reality.
We get that. Yep, we get that.
So what I do for myself is I have time away from her as well. So I take some respite, and I'm lucky enough because my husband would help or my mom would help. So that I take time every week. I take at least 1 or 2 hours just for myself. And I
nice.
do that. And I do some sports as well on a weekly basis, which every Wednesdays evening, that's what I do. Yeah, and that helps me basically. So even if I had the worst day, I would still make sure I make it for that set routine.
So that's your set schedule.
Exactly.
You stick to that. Yeah.
I stick to that schedule every week. Yeah. And I shift my work stuff around that schedule, basically.
Smart.
Because I know at that time I'm going to go play tennis.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not having any appointments. They can fall before or after or anything like that.
Great.
And that has worked quite well for me personally.
Great, thank you for sharing. Zerlina, besides mindfulness, what else do you do?
I give my entire family a break from hearing my voice.
For yourself.
So yeah, jokes aside, I speak for a living. I listen for a living. I offer presence for a living. All sounds very simple, right? But it's exhausting. Maureen, I can
Easy.
And I think we underestimate how exhausting Singapore is. So apart from the exercise, which yes, is not negotiable, and I can't say that I'm one of these woohoo who loves to get out there and no, but it's a non-negotiable. So I totally agree. Eating well, I think, is a non-negotiable as well. Please schedule in some cheat days, right? For exercise, some cheat days for eating whatever char kway teow, whatever you want. Okay. But I just suggest notice on those days how you feel.
Mhm.
Apart from the euphoria of the oily char kway teow, notice how it makes you feel in the next 2 hours, 3 hours. For me, I notice I get very impatient,
Mhm.
and I say all the wrong things. Same with the exercise. So the other thing for me, Yenlu, is silence.
Mhm.
So there is so much construction going on around me, everywhere in Singapore. So I actually have silent retreats for myself. It just means I have to make sure I go to sleep on time. So I wake up and I walk before any other humans are up and walking. And I listen to the sounds of nature, because it makes me reconnect with the fact that I am just a small little blip in this entire universe. And I'm really not that indispensable.
But you are on this panel.
So
You are on
thank
this
you.
panel. Yeah.
But silence, and also I do that at home. So if I can get 2 hours of silence, I stick I love Post-its on the door, and I say, I'm in silence. You are allowed to come in and speak to me. However, I may not respond. And I do an hour if I can on the weekends, 2 hours, or sometimes up to 8 if I have that luxury. I
Zerlina,
find, yeah.
I want to know, have you gone away on a silent retreat?
Yeah, so I do
Yeah.
10-day silent retreats. I can't do that, Maureen, can I? So
Not right now.
one of the things
Well, you
that
can
also-
actually
There are in
Singapore.
Singapore. There is.
Yeah, there are
Yes.
some.
There's
Yeah.
several,
Yeah.
No, but yes, exactly. However, what I'm saying is COVID has also made me realize and elevate the importance of self-care, so that I'm now actually better able to manage it on a daily basis and on a weekly basis, rather than to say to myself, you know, a silent retreat means I have to go through all the arrangements of delegating my childcare and going away for 10 days. Why can't I do this in a sustainable way for myself every single day, every single week?
Yeah.
So that's what I've innovated with.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me say a little bit about what I do to keep sane. So actually, it's been the past year and a half. Actually, it's been very, as a social entrepreneur, you know, juggling so many things and running a number of nonprofits. It's been actually a very stressful time for me. I mean, I work through, you know, probably 7 days a week. I work through every weekend. But the couple of things that I'm glad that Zerlina brought up, spending time in nature. I think that is very, very one of the most therapeutic and healing things we can do for ourselves. Right? When you're out there with nature, especially next to water, you know, with the trees. I mean, the trees, the trees are they're the lungs of Mother Earth. You know, they help us to breathe, and all that fresh air, the water. We're 70% water. You know, so water is a source, is a womb of creation, right? All human civilization. So good to be next to water as well. So two things that I do. I don't take breaks enough, unfortunately, Maureen. Sorry about that one. I wish I could do more, but we're doing a staycation in another month and a half, so I'm looking forward to that. But two things that I do every morning when I wake up. One is I spend an hour meditating, and Zerlina knows this. So meditation is my, you know, my self-care, main self-care exercise, and I follow that by doing an hour of swim. I do that.
So you get your exercise.
Those are two things I must do every single day, even when I'm on vacation. So those have become habits of mine. So I think so that has become my priority, you know, because I think if I don't do that, then the rest of the day will be different for me, right? So the meditation really centers me and calms me down, and it puts me in a certain space of clarity. The exercise, of course, is my energy source, as you rightly pointed out. Yeah.
So I'd like to just pose a question, Yen Lu, just based on that. Just while you're listening to all of us, everyone in the audience, why don't you just take a moment now to just ask yourself, what could be the one thing you could do more of to just take care of yourself? Keep going, Yen Lu. Good suggestions.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. No, so those are, so I think again, you know, it's well-being is about doing little things, right? Doing little things and making into a habit every single day, or it doesn't matter, every other day, right? If you're not into meditation, if you're not into 1 hour meditation, you can start with 5 minutes of quiet time, you know, like what Selena and Doreen, and rest, right? That's almost equivalent. Just have time, downtime. You know, we all spend so much time on our devices, and just have time away, you know. And of course, there's nothing that, so sleep, exercise, quiet time. I think if you can, those three things for me, I think will be, you know, will be things that we all can do. I think we all must do in terms of self-care. Anything else? In terms of anything, anyone want to share your own self-care routine? You want to type that into the chat window? You want to share with the rest of us? Oh, one more thing that I think, and I talk about this a lot, is our own self-awareness in terms of our, you know, our why we are here. Some people call that purpose. You know, I think having a sense of why we're here, and our, you know, and that's tied to our values. I think those are the things that it's one of the things that keeps us going, right? Keeps me going anyway, knowing why I'm here, what's my purpose, right here, you know, when I'm here on this planet. Right. So that's one of the things. And I think to me, that's part of self-care as well. Knowing, be connected to what your purpose is. You know, yeah, there's a word called ikigai. Everybody knows, you know, it's a Japanese word for, you know, for purpose, right? Life purpose. So I think for a lot of young people, that's also becoming more and more important. Okay.
I'm aware, Yan Lu, let's take a moment maybe just to address we have a few parents who have been with us during this whole session who have some, I just sense that they're really heavily burdened with some concerns for their kids. You know, you really feel burdened about what's happening in your relationship with your kids. And I've been thinking about how we can address that in this format, perhaps. And Pamela, maybe you can help me a little bit with this. But one thing that occurs to me is that kind of related to what Zerlina said about compassion, but it also has to do with insight. Keep in mind that when children are angry, acting angry, defiant, or oppositional, if you're getting a lot of that from a child, that is often a sign that they're depressed. Okay, we think of depression as adults about how adults demonstrate depression, but in children, depression looks a lot more angry and oppositional and negative kind of interactions. So if you've got a child who's doing a lot of that, one of my suggestions might be that you ask the school counselor to screen them for depression. And then if that screen, because the school counselor can do that at their school, can screen them for depression. And if that screening rating comes out that they may be depressed, then it's really important to see a therapist or a counselor to get some professional help for that child. And you've got lots of resources in Singapore. We'll have them in our resource list. So that may help you also as a parent to feel a little bit of compassion that angry pushback kind of behavior is often a sign that that child is really struggling with something internal. The other thing that happens a lot in Singapore, in my experience, and Pamela, you chime in here if that's true for you too, there's a lot of anxiety with young children in particular. And sometimes parents kind of see that if you've got a child who's really struggling with some behaviors, that can be a sign that they're just too anxious and there's too many demands in their life. And that would be really helpful is to cut that back. I'll just give you a quick example of that. I was asked a number of years ago to consult regarding an 8-year-old who the parents had brought the 8-year-old to see a pediatrician because they were concerned she might have an attention problem because she was working quite hard in school but not making any progress. And she was quite fussy, kind of a whiny, crying kind of child a lot. And so I was asked, the pediatrician wasn't really sure what was going on. So she asked me to consult on this. And when I saw that child's schedule and what that child was being asked to do on a day-to-day basis, I said, I am suspicious here that this child's just not getting enough rest and doesn't have enough downtime. They're going to bed at 10:30 at night, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to 8 years old. So as Zerlina and Pamela have talked about too, taking care of ourselves models for our children, but also looking for ways that we can create some space for our kids too, to just have some peace and not be chasing demands all the time. Pamela, what do you want to add to that? We've got a few parents who are really burdened about their child's behavior or their relationship.
Yeah, so I mean, in general, when kids, they all act out quite differently, but when a kid acts out, a lot of times they're crying out for help. And there's a lot of times I tell parents that your child is crying out for help. It might not be the best coping strategy, but they're basically saying, I can't cope, I need help. It might look oppositional, like you're mentioning, like some parents say it might look like anger, but that's the only way they know how to at this point in time. So it's also important as parents, of course, to model that positive strategies and get help when it's needed. We see a lot of anxiety cases in our practice on a day-to-day basis, from everything from school refusal to selective mutism. We have had a lot more selective mutism cases come true. The numbers are quite astonishing, and it's all related to anxiety. That our kids just decide that I'm not going to speak because it's just too much. Everything is just too much. And this rates from anything like, all the school stresses, society pressures, expectations. And I think parents need to give themselves a break, because I also know a lot of parents who actually blame themselves for these things.
Compassion, compassion that's
exactly. It's hard to be a parent. Everyone knows. Anyone who's a parent knows it's a tough job. And some parents put so much stress on themselves as well for this parenting that they forget to take care of themselves. And some parents as well should seek help from themselves if they need it. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in that, because we're all human beings. And if we're happy, if as a parent you're happy, your child will be happy. So a lot of the work that we work with kids, we end up working with the parents. And when we see that shift, actually the kids end up being a lot happier too. And then everything kind of falls into place as it goes along. I know all these things sounds easier said than done, but it's a good step forward.
Absolutely.
Small steps.
Small steps. But it's such an important point that this is a theme I think throughout this morning, is that the parents need to first take care of themselves, make sure that they have the space that they need, especially on the inside, what we call the inner works, right? Create the space and the time that they need for themselves, so that they're in that positive space, and that positive energy just radiates out to the rest of the family, especially for moms. Moms have such a big job and such a tough job. They have to take care of everybody. This reminds me of something else. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, when you write a letter, you know how long it takes to get to the other side? Do you remember that? Horse buggies, that's all we had. It takes probably weeks or a month for a letter. When you write someone a letter, it takes that long to get someone to someone else. And of course, when you get it, respond, it takes another few weeks, right? For the horse buggy to get to the other side. Today, everything is instantaneous. And we're on so many things that, and this, in terms of human evolution, this is not such a long time that I think about this problem issue a lot. We are chasing. The technology has especially over the past 50 years, has advanced so much. Internet has been around only for the past 20 years in terms of the consumer internet, isn't it? Before that, it was very, I used to write letters right? And now it's like everything is just, everything is so fast. Everybody wants it, when you get a message, everybody kind of expects the instantaneous reply, that sort of thing. So I think we are, we're in that space now where, and this is just, so this is what's happening in terms of parenting. That's the point I'm trying to raise, right? Where this is the age now where this is the world that they are born into and they're raised in. Right. So
can I also add something?
Of course.
Please don't believe everything you see or hear.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more.
I notice for a lot of parent groups, right, or the support.
Yeah.
When babies are young, there's always so much support, talk about eating, sleeping, routines, all that sort of thing. I see Pam nodding. When they hit school age in Singapore, it's only about the good stuff. It's what awards they've won, what score they got, and everybody's posting stuff. It amazes me how people can take photos of their child's report and post it online. There's beautiful family photos of people smiling. I think you and I all know that the next second after that camera is clicked, someone's just smacked the other person and everyone's yelling, or the ice cream has fallen down, or you are yelling, something is going on. So I want to say firstly, for all of you who have been brave enough to contribute on the chat and in the questions, you're not alone. If you suspect anything or you're struggling yourself, please reach out. Also have the curiosity. Ask yourself, what's really going on for you? What do you think is really going on for your child? And then seek some conversations, right? Start asking people about it. Put aside our egos, put aside our face, right? About this need to hold this thing about I'm coping. Everybody's coping and not. And the moment we're in this together, we realize this, we can really be support for each other. So don't wait for sessions like this. You have friends, you have family. The other thing, Yenlu, is we've kind of lost faith in the older generation to a certain extent. We spend a lot of time reading.
I haven't.
But I remember one of the, we talk about self-care. One of the things my great-grandmother said to me, I remember when my child was crying and needing to be fed, she said to me, let her cry. You need to be fed first. Feed yourself. It takes you 10 minutes to feed yourself, then go to her. Right? So ask people you trust. Open up the conversations. Seek out people like Maureen and Pamela who are, trained professionals. Corroborate evidence. Find out from other people. Have you noticed this? What else have you observed? Ask your child to observe about themselves. That's a huge thing. Collect data points about yourself. What do you notice about anxiety? Where do you feel it in your body? How does it make you feel when you come home? What does it make you feel like you want to do? What's helpful? What's not? So I think curiosity is a huge thing.
I think, thanks for that. I think while you were talking, what came up for me is that we just need to be more connected with ourselves. Looking inwards rather than always looking outwards. Some people say that's being connected to your heart, whatever you call it. Just and we can only do that when we're in a quiet space, when we're in a silence mode. I think for a lot of young people in our world, I noticed that many are empty inside because they are so, everything's attention's on the outside, but inside they're empty. And that's why we see so many issues and challenges that the young people are facing today. The one that we mentioned, the Pam's were your work, Maureen's work. Many are facing such challenges because they're looking outwards and not so much inwards. So that's something we can as parents, as teachers, and we should bring out, I want to get your sense, your point of view as a teacher as well, Maureen. You know, these are the things that, because in my work, what I want to do is I want to help young people to find their roots. I think that's one of the most important work that we can do as parents, and to help them to find their roots again, not to be drifting. You know, not to be, when you don't have, you know what happens when you don't have roots, when trees don't have roots, right? When the storm comes, it just falls over. Any storm, even small or big, right? So when you can be more rooted, that's when you can withstand a lot of stuff. When I say rooting, I mean things like be more connected with your values, be more connected with your purpose. You know, be able to create the inner space for yourself, so that you can you know, so that you're not always reacting. Yeah, you're responding rather than reacting. The things that Zerlina talked about. So those are the few things. And you know, we are 5 minutes away from 12. Any last minute sharing before we start sharing the resources? I would love to, I want to share the resources with our audience. They've been really, really great this morning. And I think they're all, how many
Pamela, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry, because when Yendu was talking about things that we need, and I'm just thinking about the language of emotions in general. It's shocking, especially in Singapore, and I think maybe in Asian context, culturally as well. We don't know how to talk about emotions. We don't know how the words to use to describe the emotions. So a lot of work of the kids that I do work with, they feel a certain way, they can express that. I just want to do this, I just want to smash the wall, but they don't actually have the word to use to describe what that actually means for them. And some parents alike as well. So I mean, on a very basic surface level, I think it's actually really important to have some emotional education. The ability to just describe what you actually are feeling to begin with, even before attending to it. I mean, all the things that we are saying, it's helpful, but sometimes people don't know what's going on with them. They just know it doesn't feel great, but what does that actually mean behaviorally? What does that actually entail? Because that would also then determine how you might want to cope with it.
That's so.
Yeah, so actually on a global level, on an education level and things like that, actually that's what's really lacking in our academically curriculum, an emotional part of it, but that's again for a different discussion. But yeah, something parents can take note of as well. Your kids might not have the words to really express what's really going on with them.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I totally agree with that, Pam. Totally agree with that. I think emotion is something that in our work with young people, you know, it's not something, it's such a left-brain society. You know, it's all about the cognitive part and not so much the emotional part, you know, and that's why young people don't know how to express them. That's why they run into problems, because because emotionally they don't even know how to talk about it. So be able to talk about emotion, having the language to talk about emotions, to be able to address their emotions in our work with them. I think that's part of what we're talking about here as well. Empathy, what we talk about, empathetic listening, empathetic communication, which is all about emotions. So totally agree with that. Totally agree with that.
Totally agree with it. And I also want to say that quite often when we say these things, we always go, you know, we need more education, we need more this, we need more that. Until that happens, and it will happen. I mean, always try to be optimistic.
Yeah, it will.
Yes.
We can really only start with ourselves. And if we are struggling to find that granularity of our emotions, or we know that we have something that we're not dealing with, start with ourselves, start with healing ourselves, so that we are not in a position to be or continue to be part of the problem or the challenge, but we can be part of the solution in our own very small way. I'm not saying this to add more to your plate, parents, at all. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying that sometimes we feel helpless. But we start with healing ourselves. That gives us the energy.
Okay, I think we need to, thank you, Zerlina. I think we need to wrap up now. I just want to bring up the point. I think Zerlina raised earlier about, and everyone else as well, about you're not alone. And the reason we started this parenting series at AIM is so that you're not alone. We want to create the community, the village, that as parents or anyone else can come and just, so that we can journey together, right, as parents and as human beings, and we can tap into each other's experience and wisdom and expertise. And there's plenty here that you can tap into this morning with the 3 outstanding panelists that we all have. I've learned a lot myself. I've also typed into the chat window, everyone. Thank you all for staying. I think everybody's still here. Thank you all for staying. Yeah, to be with us all the way through. I type into the chat window a link to a Google Doc on all the mental health resources that we curated and collated for you. Okay, and you can all access that. It has lots and lots of resources, all the way from resources for yourself, things that you can do, resources from over the rainbow, resources for your child, for your children that they can tap into. A lot of resources in the community as well. So it really is like 2 pages almost of resources. The challenge is not a lack of resources, but how you navigate them, in terms of your situation and your own need. But we're here. We're here for you, right? So so with that, why don't we, any last word, panelists? Anyone, any words of wisdom? There's so much wisdom.
I just want to say
This
it's really
morning.
been a privilege to participate. I've really appreciated the invitation to be a member,
Thank you.
be part of this.
Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking Maureen, Pamela, and Zerlina. Everyone, thank you. Join me in thanking them.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your time as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for coming today.
Yes, please stay behind just for a few minutes. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. And we hope you benefited from this fireside chat. I think there's a lot of, wisdom, a lot of experiences that we share. And we'll hope to see you again next time. Okay, have a good Saturday afternoon. Have a good weekend. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Be well
everyone.
and stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. How was that? Hi.
We still have some attendees.
Okay.
Give them some time to
Sure.
people off.
Yes. We had 80, right? Something like that.
83, I think I saw.
83.
Yeah,
Yes.
83.
Yes.
Bless you, Pam and Maureen.
No, thank you, Zerlina.
Thank
Everyone
you.
was
Knowing
great.
you
Yeah.
guys are doing
Bless
an
you all.
amazing
Thank
job
you
with
so
everyone.
much. Yeah. And thanks to Hawk Lai and Agnes.
Definitely.
For coordinating.